you're also looking very fresh. I'm guessing.
All these Xtra Bytes sessions make me really go fresh.
Raj, who's taken this one?
This is photographed by Suyash Kamath, who's a filmmaker friend from Goa. This was, I think, in fact, shot while I was working on the Goa project. If I remember right. It's around 3 or 4 years, 4 years ago, yeah.
This is around the time that we went and saw Ronnie's show at... what's that place, yeah? That strange gallery that we went to.
Strange gallery. We've been to a lot of strange galleries.
Hey, dude, this is the one.
Ghar
ke andar there was a show, yeah. It was Ronnie's Jharia work.
Oh yeah, the Johor Bagh.
Yeah. It was a house actually, wasn't a gallery.
That's a sweet space, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we are live now. Good evening, friends. Good evening to another wonderful evening. This time Sunday evening of Xtra Bytes. And just to give you, before we get into this session today, just let me give you a brief backdrop to people who are here for the first time. And in our panel also, we have somebody who's joining us for the first time. So we were thinking about doing something from quite a long time, but finally we decided to, and during lockdown, we decided on, in the mid of April, to start this Xtra Byte session series. And we started with one Italian commercial advertising and street photographer, Iolo Porfido. And now, fast forward, we are sitting on 26th of July, and this is our episode number 53. And
you're sure you're not the reason why the lockdown is being continued, huh? And lockdown chala rakho ji, main talks karni hai hali kafi.
And we have had some amazing sessions so far. Amazing is an understatement, because the kind of the knowledge that has been shared, the kind of peak that we've been getting into the life stories of the life journeys of these wonderful photographers has been amazing. And thank you everyone for actually sticking by us and being a part of Xtra Byte series. Now today we have one wonderful photographer, Raj Lalwani, and I think when I was trying to research about him, the very interesting facts came in front of me. But as far as I'm concerned, I had seen his name in Better Photography, that editorial team. So I remembered him from those days. I remember having interacted with him once or twice, not much, but through emails and all, but not much. So let me just give you a brief introduction about Raj Lalwani. So Raj Lalwani calls himself a photographer. So I will still have to figure out what photographer. So, but he's a photographer whose practice hovers in the space between what was and what will be. So, he, formerly a deputy editor of Better Photography magazine, he quit that and founded C, which is a web journal dedicated to the contemplative writing on the medium. Now, in 2018, Doc Photo and Blow Up Press named him as one of the 20 best emerging photographers in the world. And that is amazing, I think. So what is most interesting, so I won't go on and on because I have, I'll request somebody else also to introduce him. But what is most interesting, I found most interesting about him is that he does not live anywhere but in his head. And his head along with his body resides in some place called Bombay. He still refuses to call it Mumbai, so for whatever reason. So, so welcome Raj, welcome to this platform. Thank you for accepting the invite to be on the panel, to be as a speaker and sharing your life journey and sharing your body of work. So welcome to this. And we also have on panel, we have Dinesh Khanna sir, Amit Mehra sir, Soumya Khandelwal, who's been here earlier, and for the first time, who's joining us as a panel and as a somebody who will be taking this entire session forward is Raghav Pastricha. So welcome, Raghav, and welcome to you as well for the first time. So over to you, Raghav, and take us from here now.
Sir, I have something to say.
Sir.
Sir, what were those interesting facts which you found about Raj Lalwani which you didn't mention here?
वो अभी आएंगे. See, मेरे लिए, let me be honest now, since you've said this, and I've been trying to figure out that मेरे लिए इस समय learning ज़रूरी है कि unlearning ज़रूरी है. So I think that after going through the body of work, his body of work, and I feel that it is important for everybody to unlearn, especially for me and others also, and to understand how do you really see. And so I'm going to probably have a couple of questions. That is where I will, I think people will know that what interesting I found. But what is most interesting, since you've said this, what is most interesting I found is that people like us, they make their life easier by going to an iconic place which is already beautiful and just using our camera to make it even more beautiful. So half the work is done by the place itself or the subject itself. But what he does is that he makes something very, very ordinary and mundane, make it look extraordinary and momentous, I think. And that is how I differentiate him. And that is what I found very interesting about it. Yeah, Raghavji, please.
Raghav.
So, everyone's got a bit of a jumbled introduction to Raj. And I think at this point in time, I can only add to the mess slightly. But Raj is a photographer and a friend, and his work, as you will see, spans multiple genres of photography, multiple focal points of photography, and through it all, the one thing that I feel compelled to tell the audience and to the listeners today is that he is very committed to finding his own voice and style, irrespective of the subject matter that he's photographing. Why do I start his introduction with this? Is simply because there's a lot of photography that one can enjoy because it seems instantly familiar, it seems very refined, but there's the work of certain photographers who pose a bit of a challenge to you. And Raj is one of those photographers who, despite being a friend, has posed a visual challenge to me very often. And that truly is what I enjoy most about his work. In addition to this, I think what is special about Raj's work is that it is extremely sensitive to the subject that is in front of his lens. Whether it is something as banal as a streetlight and a couple of dogs rolling on the ground, or it is a dear friend, or it is somebody who he's met just a few hours ago and struck up a wonderful conversation with. So it's this mix of sensitivity, a distinctive eye, and an obsessive sort of engagement with the medium of photography that has led to the work that you're going to see. I won't take up too much more of your time and I invite Raj to start sharing the work. I think he has a few bodies of work planned for you. Please feel free to send in your questions to Jessiji on YouTube, and I'm sure that we'll find ways to bring your questions in along with the questions and the comments of the panelists. And with that, I will hand over to Raj, and I hope you really enjoy today's presentation.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Raghav, for that rather generous introduction. Of all the things that have been said so far, I think there are 2 or 3 very interesting points which I would like to start off with because I think it's important for me to say certain things before I show my photographs. Jussie said that he felt that he was unable to box my work into any particular genre, and he emphasized that I like to call myself a photographer rather than identifying my photography with a particular uh, genre, a particular subject matter, a particular motivation. And that's partly because I don't like boxes. I absolutely dislike boxes. I I don't think there are different kinds of loves, and when this is a medium that you're so much in love with, and that is the case for me. I've been doing photography now for around 13 years, 12 to 13 years, and when it's something that compels you to spend every waking minute either making an image or just seeing photographs that you are unable to make because it's rude to not have because it's rude to have the camera in front of your face all the time. But when you love something so much, I believe not in boxing it up into different styles. And instead, I would say photography for me is a bridge. Instead of barriers within photography, I believe photography is that bridge with which I like to engage with the world, whether it is engaging with the city, any city, though I love Bombay, of course, and I hate it, of course. Like everyone who lives in the big city, we love and hate our cities, and it's these complicated feelings that lead to a lot of interesting art, I guess. But cities, people, subject matter, I think photography allows me to see certain things that I wouldn't have noticed otherwise. And that for me, it's not really about, maybe it's about making photographs of the ordinary, but I think in the most regular, ordinary situations, unexpected magic happens, because life can be far more uh, interesting than fiction can ever be. There are things about life that if I tell you, you would think that I'm making it up. You think that I'm a fiction writer. But that's what happens when subjects present themselves to you when you least expect them. And that is something that I personally enjoy about photography. Um, as Jassi ji said, I have for a really long time also written on the medium. And uh, my writing has helped my engagement on multiple levels. But the most important thing that it gave me was that it ensured that there was no gun to my head to produce a certain kind of photograph. Because purely from a practical perspective, my writing was making me money, very little money, because publishing does not pay. But it was allowing me that freedom that I could take my time and figure out exactly what I want to do in photography, rather than be pressurized to fit into a certain mold or a certain uh, uh, business compulsion or a certain zone. And it really allowed me to play. There have been multiple people who have, of course, influenced my journey, but most of all, I think it was my photography professor, because I did not want to be a photographer. I have, for the longest time, wanted to be everything. I wanted to be a mathematician. I love math. I know that sounds weird, but I love math. I wanted to be a cricketer. It's just that I could not play cricket. I ended up naming my brother after a cricketer. I named my brother Sachin because I could not bat like Sachin myself. I've wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write novels. I want to write literature. And then I realized, when a certain professor called David D'Souza taught me in college, that this one device, and I hate calling it a device because technology sounds so cold, but this one camera can be a way to open your life up to a variety of experiences that we otherwise probably couldn't have. I would like to start today by I'm showing 4 bodies of work today, and I've chosen what I thought would be a fun mix. Some of this work I'm looking at after a long time. Some of this work might be what some people might be familiar with. I think it's best if we first look at all the work, and then we can, have questions from Raghav or from any of the panelists or the audience. I'm going to share my screen. 1 second. Is this visible?
Yep.
The menu is visible right now.
I'm just going to do a full screen. Just give me a second. One second. How do I minimize zoom? Yes. Is it visible right now?
Yeah.
No, you need to probably open it first and then.
Screen
1 second.
Not through the menu, because then the menu stays on the screen only.
Is that?
You need to stop sharing.
Yeah.
And first open this keynote separately.
presentation.
Okay, 1 second. 1 second. I'm going to open the presentation first. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And then when
Alright.
you go to share screen, then you'll see it on the desktop and you select that.
Perfect. Share screen and keynote. Is that shared now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Oh God, this
Okay.
was the time I've spent on this in the last few months. Bloody hell.
Okay, so this is a body of work that is called Difficult Loves. I started making these photographs subconsciously in a similar kind of lockdown, in fact, when a bout of chickenpox forced me to spend more time at home than I usually would. Photography at that time was only an escape, but this was also around the time that my whole approach towards picture making was changing. From consciously going out to look for photographs, because until then I would do a lot of street photography, I started finding great delight in photographs finding me instead. In the fact that what might seem ordinary, what you might be used to, will still produce magic. Because there were lizards that were forming punctuations to an arc-shaped shadow. My kid brother's hand was poking out of a cupboard surrounded by all the stickers that I had pasted onto the cupboard when I was his age.
Sorry to interrupt you, Raj, but is there only me who is facing this, or is there a problem with the presentation? It's just
It's a slideshow which is moving on its own. Do you want it to do that?
On its own, and it's first is underexposed and then it's getting slightly overexposed and then it's properly exposed.
It's not underexposed at all, but it is timed on its own.
It's showing 3 exposures. First it's underexposed, then it's coming to the terms, and then it's going rightly exposed.
Because it's buffering a bit. Raj, just press play. And then
I think buffering the net issue is there. Yeah.
Can I start
Also,
again?
at least I don't hear Raj very clearly. I'm not sure about the others.
Raj, do you have a Wi-Fi? Are you on the 4G or are you on a Wi-Fi connection, Raj?
I'm on a 4G, but I can switch to a different 4G if this one's posing any
So just do one thing. Just pause the presentation and run a speed test on either or connection and just try after that, because it's A little jumpy.
Yeah, it's going slow. It's like buffering is taking time.
Buffering, yeah.
That's what's happening.
Sure. Just give me a second.
Do you want it to move forward automatically or you want to do it manually?
I want it to move forward automatically.
Okay. Which is doing. But probably that's what's making it kind of,
Yeah,
shimmer.
it's buffering. Yeah.
I'm just changing my internet connection. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on a different connection now. Let's just try it. Within 2 or 3 slides, can one of you give me an okay that it's going okay? Because I wouldn't want to show the whole work and start again.
I'll do that. Just make sure you go to full screen so that then the menu bar is not visible on top.
Absolutely.
We can still see your menu bar.
That's strange.
No, still the same issue.
Raj, change the view.
Can you try without going
slide only?
Go slide only.
Okay.
So you move it manually and see what happens.
Okay, Raj, I'll tell you how to fix it. If you can stop your screen share, open the keynote on the background.
Yes.
And you share your desktop and not the keynote directly.
I share my desktop. Okay. Just give me a second. Share screen. Is this better?
Yeah.
Yep, you got full screen now.
Now run the show. The issue is still there. Buffering issue is there.
Basically, it's the buffering, but I think if we can
you'll have to do
ignore
it
that.
manually.
I think you have to do it manually because
the slides are opening from under to the right exposure.
The transition is showing up. The transition is showing up slightly slowly, which is why I think Meyerowitz is facing the problem. But
aren't you guys facing the problem?
Is everyone facing the problem, or is it a problem just with one connection? Everyone's facing the problem.
Facing the problem, yeah.
If you go manual, you'll be okay.
Let's do this manually. Okay, absolutely. Just give me a second.
Yeah.
Okay, talk about awkward starts. No, I think it's okay. I think awkward starts lead to good photographs and hopefully good conversations as well. Share screen, keynote, difficult laughs. Here you go. Is this visible for everyone?
Yeah. Just go manually 1 or 2.
Oh, I will be going manually as long as it's visible for everyone. I'm now starting from start to finish. I'll be going slowly so that it's okay on everyone's connection. In case there's an issue, interrupt me. Otherwise, we will roll. Okay, so this actually is one of the first bodies of work I started working on. And yet it was a body of work that happened completely subconsciously. It was a very similar kind of lockdown, but a personal one. When a bout of chickenpox had forced me to spend more time at home than I usually would. And because of that, I was fried sitting at home all the time. I was just not used to it. And photography at that time was only an escape. But this was also around the time that my whole approach towards picture making started changing. Until then, I used to love photographing the streets. I would consciously go out looking for photographs. But here, forced to be in one place, I had photographs instead coming to me and finding me instead. And I started noticing things. I started observing things that probably were always in my subconscious, but it was for the first time that I was seeing them. There was a lizard, and there are lots of lizards in this strange house that I live in, forming a punctuation to an arc-shaped shadow. My kid brother's hand was poking out of a cupboard that was surrounded by the same stickers that I had pasted on that cupboard when I was his age. And these like this football obscuring my brother's face, were the first bits of recognition for me that photography can be about the immediate and the everyday. Now, this was also around the time that I discovered the works of two photographers who have greatly influenced me, Swapan Parekh and Saul Leiter. Their ruminations into the everyday greatly influenced the way I started to look at things in my house. And then this was also the time that I discovered a photographer called Nan Golden. And her work grabbed my heart and squeezed it so hard. All through the use of artificial light that is both heady and attractive. And slowly the openness to seeing a picture in my immediate vicinity became an urge, a need, and eventually a hunger that is constantly gnawing away at me. And so the only reason to make photographs at home was not some larger ulterior motive. In fact, for the longest time, I did not realize that I had a set of photographs that could be strung together. But the only reason to make pictures at home was that I could not make pictures. You know, a lot of people say that photography is about preserving memories, but I don't think it was about that for me, at that time at least. And nor was it a documentary project. I was not documenting the goings on in this madhouse caper of a joint family that I live in. It was just the fact that I could not shoot. It is mere maddening compulsion. And over time, I realized that my camera was becoming a conduit. Not so much to say anything, but just to receive them, just to engage with the world. And photography, I think, is also a kind of catharsis. It helped me make sense of the chaos that are surrounded with. And slowly along the way, often subconsciously, sometimes consciously, I kept making these photographs. Now, of course, the response of my family to the camera has been an interesting one. Earlier, they were treated like an important guest whom they had to dress up for. Later, it became an uninvited relative whose presence they weren't quite happy with. But finally, it just became acceptance. Them knowing that this is a part of me, that the camera is a part of me, that photography is a part of me. The urge to see is who I am, is a part of me. And consequently, it's a part of us. Of course, they always wondered why I was shooting the way I was. These probably were not photographs that were conforming to their ideas of what a family album must look like. But after all these years, when they see some of these photos, they shrug, they nod, they smile. That's a small glimpse. That's a small glimpse into what I've been photographing at home now for 10 years, because I started shooting this in the summer of 2010. Um, I'm sorry. It was I went with the pictures a little slower than I usually like, but I was just uh, doing the same because just so that everyone's internet connections can see the pictures clearly. It's also strange to be looking at photographs and thinking and operating the computer at the same time. Now, because it was a little clunky, I'm going to quickly just show a virtual contact sheet once again. I want to show the next work immediately after this. We can obviously discuss any individual work after all the photographs are shown. And if anyone wants to come back to any work at any point of time, of course, we can do that. Okay, 1 second. I will show you the contact sheet. I'm sorry, I kept talking and I did not realize that my screen was not being shared anymore. It's like the story of my life. I kept talking. That's like an autobiography. So that's the contact sheet. Is it visible? Raghav, is this visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah.
Can we have a black? Can we get an all black screen?
I have no idea how that works, but
Okay, no worries.
so we'll come back to the work. If anyone wants to see the work at any point of time, we can always do it. I want to show a work after this that I like to call Everyday Words and Love Songs. This was a body of work that I photographed largely in a few months, though I continued shooting it after that. I was documenting the brass musicians of Goa. It's a work that originally started as a commission. I was commissioned by the Neel Dongre Foundation to work on a project related to music. And I chose Goa because, I mean, I think at one level, I just wanted an excuse to be in Goa. And I think that has often defined my photography a lot, where I want to be. I will make up excuses to go photograph something simply because I want to experience a new place. Even when I started photography, photography for me was a means to engage with Bombay, having grown up in a very ultra sheltered home before that, before I went to college and picked up the camera. And that is, I think, this beautiful thing about any art form, that it can be a gateway. It can be a gateway to things that we are otherwise told that we must not do. So Everyday Words and Love Songs, I started photographing this in the winter of 2014. Now, I have set a timer, and because I want to play this with music, can we just try the first 2 or 3 photographs? And you all can tell me if the connection is now better.
Now the connection is better now because we can see you clearly and hear you far way better. So I think it'll work.
Hopefully. Okay, so just interrupt me after the third photo in case there's a problem. All right?
Okay.
All right.
Share screen. Everyday Words and Love Songs. Yep.
Raj, the music cut out in the last slide, huh?
Mm.
Did? Okay.
The music cut out in the last slide, just the last photograph.
Okay.
The music cut off and then it got stuck for a second, but everyone got a look at it. So maybe we'll show the last photograph, last two photographs again when we are having the conversation.
Sure. I'll anyway switch to the light table for the next 2 minutes. While just give me a second. I'm on Zoom. I share screen. Can you see the light table?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so just give me a second. How do you? Yes. So this was a body of work that originally started in 2014 and 15, but I have been uh, continuing to photograph it, perhaps not as often as I would like to. But for me, the culture was something that fascinated me. A lot of us tend to associate Goa with beaches, with debauchery, with cheap alcohol. Um, and yes, probably all the stereotypes about Goa are true. But the thing with stereotypes is that they're all true, and yet there is so much more. And that is something that I was slightly familiar with because of the fact that Goa, there are echoes of Goa in Bombay. There are echoes of Goa in certain parts of Bombay, which also happen to be my favorite parts. And and I realized that something over there was changing very quickly. Something about this tradition of brass music was changing very, very quickly. And I responded that in the only way I could to photograph it, to try and hold on to it while we can. I'm going to stop sharing and show you another work, which I don't often share this, uh, partly because the photographs I'm going to show you were shot in a day. They were shot over a few hours at a wedding. And yet, when I look back at these photographs, apart from the emotional resonance that they have, um, for me, it's extremely interesting because I tend to work on extremely long-term projects. I tend to work on subjects that have no expiry date. And that is probably one of the dangers of photographing uh, things that do not have a factual narrative. Because when you're photographing things in and around your life, uh, when does that work really end? Is it work, or is it just something that you do? And those are questions that do not have easy answers. But Goa, in that sense, was a far more finite body of work simply because I do not live in Goa. I have always been a visitor. Thank you. That is Zaryab and Rini, who got married uh, in a wedding that had 7 people before coronavirus restrictions. I was the 7th one, so you can imagine how intimate and special it was. Finally, I will be showing you a body of work that is called Clementine. This is a small excerpt from Clementine, and I see Clementine largely as a novella, which it's fiction of sorts, though I would say it veers more towards autofiction. And it uses portraits. It uses portraits that are sometimes spontaneous and sometimes planned, and eventually is trying to chronicle the melancholy of the feeling of lost love. Uh, since it's fiction, I collaborate with a number of protagonists to photograph this, and what it looks like is something like this. Just give me a second. Is my screen being shared? No, it's not. Sorry. Clementine, yes, now. Okay.
Raj, there's a problem.
Raj, we can't hear the music.
R-
And we can't hear you. Sorry.
Last 4 slides, Raj. I think when you came back and switched on your camera, something went wrong.
Also, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you. I think when you got up, something snapped. I don't know.
Jesse, you can unmute him, right?
I'm asking him to. Just a minute. Yeah.
Am I audible right now?
Yeah.
Okay, I was muted over there for some reason. Okay, so you're saying the last 4 photographs?
Yeah,
When
just
you,
when
moment you got up, something went wrong.
Okay, I don't know. So I'm just going to quickly show you all the last few photographs. Yes. Okay, so that is Clementine. I'm showing you a light table so that...
did you play the last 4 photographs?
I did.
You didn't share the screen with us.
Share screen.
Yeah, now play. You can.
Yeah.
Yeah, just play from that point on.
Just give me a second.
Can't hear the music.
I've switched off the music.
Okay.
Right, so that is what Clementine is. I'm switching on the light table so that it can be on screen while we can start talking. Just give me 1 minute. I'm switching on the light table.
We have questions coming in, Raj, so tell me when you're ready.
Just give me 1 second, please. Yes, let's go.
So I'm going to, kick off this round of questioning by integrating a question that's come from YouTube,
Okay.
as well as something that I wanted to sort of flag at the beginning of this talk, really.
Okay.
When you introduced the family work to us, Difficult Loves, you spoke of two things, that photography.
It froze.
Raghav, your connection is frozen.
Raghav,
In the meantime, can I come in with a question, or Amit sir,
Yeah.
did you have a question? Did you raise your hand? We can't hear you.
No, you carry on. I was just pointing out Raghav.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing all of this work, and as always, it's so good and so meditative to look at your images so many times.
Soumya, I
About your
can't.
style of photography.
Yeah,
Soumya, I
Soumya.
couldn't hear you.
Oh God, bad internet day today, is it?
Yeah, bad internet day. I've been struggling since morning today.
God, is it any better now?
Yeah, now
I can hear
it's
you
fine
now. I can hear you clearly now. Yes.
So we were talking about writing, and we were talking about photography, and we were talking about how your photographic style is a certain kind of style where it tends to draw attention to itself, right? And I think it translates beautifully into your own pictures, into your own personal projects, because it is so much about you, and your style in photography kind of leads us and kind of tells us more about who you are. But what I'm curious about is, how does that style, the photographic style, translates into documentary projects when you're photographing not your immediate surroundings, not your family, but when you're photographing someone else, do you decide to approach projects or stories where you're photographing other people differently? Or are those projects as much about you as they are about other people?
I think every work that all of us do is about us. It's about the things we photograph, it's about the people we photograph, but it's also about us. All of photography can be a self-portrait. Sometimes by just the basic decision that you choose to photograph a particular subject, right? Someone like Jassi loves the mountains. He chooses to photograph mountains. Dinesh is drawn to color. Amit to faith. You to certain issues that you feel very strongly about. And uh, and so we are present in every photograph, whether we like it or not. However, what I feel is the ideal. I want my photographs to be a window and a mirror. Through my photographs, I want to see the outside world. I want to see the stories of others, but I want to see it through my lens. I want that individualism to be there, such that whether you want to call it authorship, but look, everyone has photographed everything, right? There are very few subjects uh, that are new per se, but what is new always is is you and your perspective. Because today a dog can shoot a technically perfect photograph. I mean, it probably hasn't happened very often, but if you leave the camera lying around on the floor and the dog comes by and puts his paw on the shutter release, it will be sharp and well exposed and everything, you know. What are we adding to it? And that is why I believe that we have to strive for our own authorship to come through whatever kind of work we are doing, whether it is commercial work, or whether it's something we are doing for the love of it, or whether we are narrating an important story about somebody else. But herein lies the fact that as photographers, we have to balance it out. We have to strive for a window that is clear enough for us to see the world outside, but also reflects some light so that we can also see a little bit of ourselves. You know, that time of day when light hits a window, light hits glass, not a mirror, light hits glass in such a way that you're able to see what lies beyond, and you're also able to see a hint of yourself. I feel that as photographers, we need to strive for that. Not overpower the subject. Our style or our way of seeing should not come in the way of understanding a story or empathizing with the person you're photographing, but it should be there.
Thanks. Raghav, over to you. I took that moment to ask a question.
Thanks a ton for compensating for Airtel sort of pushing me over. But Raj, you talked about escape. You talked about how the fact that work was, the family work was not made consciously. It was just you shooting while you were at home and you were stuck at home and not too well.
Yeah.
While you were answering Soumya's question, which I unfortunately could not hear, was you sort of mentioned the fact that everything has been photographed any which way, and how do we, sort of shoot anew? Now, these three statements of yours lead me to a pretty important question in the context of your work.
Okay.
Which is that very often what you're photographing at a particular place, and I have experienced this firsthand because we've traveled together, we spend a lot of time in different cities together, is entirely different from the regular perception of what is going on. So far from, sort of simply thinking of photography as an escape or thinking of photography as something that's happening subconsciously, I find that very often you are alive to possibilities that don't really occur to me for sure, but to various other practitioners at the same time. So that's part one. The question of possibilities that you are alive to in any and every moment that you're in.
Wait, can I address that? I'll forget what you're saying after that.
Okay. Because there's an illustrative question from YouTube, which is why I wanted to mention it. There's somebody who sent in a question. It's not a distraction.
Yeah, sure.
So there's somebody called Chetan who sent in a message, and he's sort of brought up the same thing in a slightly more simplistic way, where he said what made him photograph dog feet and human feet together. And he's done this more than once. Now, it's again this, the possibilities that exist. It's a very sweet way of asking it, I do think. But if you'd like to talk about that, that would be lovely.
Okay. What made me photograph dog feet and human feet together? The fact that I love dogs. That's probably the starting point. And I think dogs are as human as humans are, because most humans are not human enough. I think who's the person who asked this question?
Chetan Dodwad.
Okay, so Chetan, for me, it's very it's, if I overanalyze it right now, I'll probably be making things up. The fact is that photography for me is an act of my subconscious. It it is me putting my subconscious out, and it is extremely intuitive. It is extremely instinctive. Of course, intuition does not mean just hit and run. You know, sorry, that sounds very Salman Khan. Intuition does not just mean that you shoot anything. Intuition is also built over time. And I think for me, a lot of the photography that I was exposed to um, was probably in a zone where uh, things were photographed not so much to provide information, but to evoke an emotion. The photograph itself did not have all the answers. And you know, there's that terrible cliche that a photograph is worth 1,000 words. But if a photograph is really telling you 1,000 words, then it's boring. I would rather just read the writing. You know, I would rather that a photograph include questions. I'd rather a photograph make the viewer curious and make me curious that, oh, wait, what is happening? Why are this person's feet and the dog's feet forming these patterns that are mirroring each other? Through that, can I convey the relationship perhaps shared by that person and the dog um, in a way that is a little more subtle, in a way that is a little more abstract? Um, because when you, I mean, it's like when you hear a story, right? If I tell you that I went to Goa, I had a good time. I mean, it's boring. But if I actually start painting images, if I start telling you the tinier details, I'm drawn to tiny details, whether it's someone's hand, whether it's someone's paw, whether it's a crack on the wall, and the way street light hits that crack. I absolutely love that. Um, is it a way of seeing that to come to the way you said it, is it different from the way other people see it? I don't think so. I think each one of us sees the world in a different way. At one point of time, we are schooled by uh, the rules we read. We are schooled by people who say that no, this needs to be like this. We are schooled by people who say that writing has to be a particular way, or photography has to be a particular way. uh, for me to say something that Jesse said at the beginning of the talk, photography has been about a lot of learning followed by a lot of unlearning, about being open to different possibilities. And then it's not really that my way of seeing is different from other people. It is, but then so is yours, and so is Amit's and Jesse's and Dinesh's and everyone. And that is what we need to eventually find.
So following up from, this idea that everyone has their own way of seeing and that possibilities aren't really defined, universally or uniformly for everyone. I want to get to this idea of restlessness actually. When you were showing us the work on the musicians from Goa, you said, I really just wanted an excuse, perhaps. But very often you tend, when you are shooting, and again I'm using information that I'm privy to as a friend and as somebody who does travel with you and when we work together, that you're often very keen not to be at any place at all. I mean, it's literally trying to be on the move as long as one can be. And that is an interesting and also at times infuriating part of your process, if there is a process at all hidden in there, which I fail to see at times. But you do tend to want to constantly change location, constantly keep doing things, and it's almost at times done to the point of exhaustion. Could you talk about how that leads to some of the images that you make, perhaps, or has led to you trying to make certain images, maybe some that we haven't seen even over here?
I think there are different kinds of photographers. There are photographers who arrive at scenes and then try to work them. There are photographers who will sit at the same spot for an hour. When I'm photographing portraits, I tend to be like that, in fact. I tend to spend maybe 2 hours making one picture. I will press the shutter several times, but it is that one photograph that I seek. And I am working through the space, through the interaction with that person. But when it comes to places don't talk back to me as directly as people do, and that is why I'm moving around trying to find the rhythms, perhaps. Again, I'm right now analyzing myself. I am often not even aware that I can be this restless. But I think it's about the fact that for me, it's a very strange thing. The first instinctive response to a scene is usually the strongest picture that I make. And then I photograph a lot more. It's not like I do not have perhaps the kind of conviction that a lot of photographers who have grown up on analog have. But at least in the past few years, I believe my instinct has been honed to a point where most of the time, the way I see something immediately is it. And then I'm looking for something else. I'm hungry and I'm looking for the next frame that one can get. And also the whole idea of photography for me is restlessness. Because when you're doing something, when you keep doing something over and over and over again, you often forget that you're doing it. And that is when the subconscious takes over. Because it's very easy to say intuition, subconscious, but what does that mean? It's because, say, a good writer is putting in that rigor of writing 300 words a day or 500 words a day. In that sense, I am constantly looking for the next frame. I'm mostly having a camera on me. Sometimes when I'm fast asleep as well, as some friends have found out and photographed, much to my embarrassment. But that for me is also a process towards honesty. Because when you're photographing something over and over again, you do not have a bigger picture in mind. And that's when you're responding intuitively. You're actually responding from the gut. And then it's that process of repetition that, of course, shapes the way you see.
You mentioned that you photograph portraits very differently, that you actually, spend a lot of time photographing one person, that, you'll keep sort of probing that moment and that interaction before you actually get what you want.
Yeah.
So I'm going to again build in a question that we've got from the audience, but I'm going to press you further to explain some of that. You and I have sat and looked at a lot of fashion photography. Largely, I've been excited by some possibilities, you've been excited by some possibilities, but very often when it comes to portraits, in the way that they're practiced in commercial fashion photography, you have responded with sounds which are generally not approving. You're like, bah. And it's always very amusing to me and it's very fun. But it's that direct sort of simplistic portrait that ostensibly reveals something about the person. I mean, these are the common ways in which portraits are talked about, that, it's such a fantastic portrait. The light tells me so much about a person, or, the way they're looking at the camera tells me so much about a person. Not only do you sort of assiduously avoid any possibility of falling into those traps, but very often you go to a very different extreme, which is that the person is present in their portrait, but they are also obscured by their portrait in many, many ways and in very many complex patterns and shapes and things like that. So there's somebody who calls themselves Negi Wanderlust. I hope you're okay with being called that when I'm asking your question. Who said, "Why are all your pictures so mysterious?" So could you talk a little bit about the mysterious nature of your portraits that reveal and conceal in equal measure, and what's that process about?
Okay, if I understood your question properly, you are asking me why I enjoy obscuring faces sometimes. Is that
Obscuring, it
or
is a different grammar to a portrait. It's a
sure?
different grammar to a portrait from the conventional one.
Yeah.
And you did talk about how you spend a lot of time actually when you're working on portraits. You're not really as restless as you are when you're at places or photographing things that are more abstract perhaps. So if you could reconcile those two bits, that you're spending a lot of the time and then at the same time there is a lot of abstraction or obscuring that is going on.
Sure. I think it's a mix of different things, and it also depends on the kind of work I'm doing. For instance, I remember when I started photographing the portraits of the musicians in Goa. For the first 2 weeks, I was making certain pictures, and I was thrilled with them. I thought, I've arrived. I was like very, very thrilled. My head was in the clouds and all that. And I showed the pictures to somebody who was on the screen right now. Amit Mehra was in Goa at that time. And I showed him the photographs, and he said that.
I can imagine how that went.
No, he said that we've had this conversation before. He said that all these photographs are very good, but I can't find out anything about the person you're photographing. I'm only seeing you in these pictures. And that also comes back to something that Soumya said. And it hit me at that time. He's like, you're just showing off. He's like, these are fantastic photos, but terrible photos when it comes to storytelling, when it comes to actually explaining the culture and stuff like that. And that's when it hit me that um, that the kind of portraiture I was enjoying otherwise could not be applied to absolutely every kind of work, right? Um, that it is about giving enough respect to uh, the subject you're photographing, such that their story is also told. But when it comes to something like Clementine, and when it comes to even certain moments within the Goa work, I enjoy, I believe a portrait is not just the face. Because if you remember somebody, and I'm just saying, try and remember absolutely anybody. You could be remembering your closest friend, you could be remembering, uh, you know, a person you met on the streets 3 years ago. You won't necessarily remember their face, but you will remember tiny things they did. You'll remember gestures, you'll remember expressions, you might perhaps remember the fact that their fingers were crooked, but you will not remember their face as clearly. Because the human mind and memory is like that. I believe that all of us um build a picture of other people based on our memories. And this picture is like a jigsaw puzzle. It's not just the face, it's not just a likeness of what that person looks like. It's also who they are. And that comes through in several different ways. I am interested in some of the other ways. I'm interested not in the main piece of the jigsaw, but in the tiny things that eventually fill up the whole puzzle.
So before I, sort of drone on and on, do any of the other panelists have questions? I mean, it would be great to, bring you guys in. And
yeah, just one additional thought. I mean,
sure.
the other reason why I think my portraits are long, my portrait sessions are long drawn processes is the obvious thing that portraiture is not easy. Uh, just the fact that, you know, all of us are photographers on this screen, and a lot of photographers in the audience. We're all so fortunate that people open themselves up to us, people trust us. And uh, even if we're photographing strangers or people we don't know very well, you know, for Clementine, for the documentation of the brass musicians, or just a portrait you may make on the street, uh, there are moments of astonishing shared familiarity with them in that 1/160th of a second. And then 1/60th of a second later, their guard is back up. Because, and that's why you know, a portrait session is not as instant, because I do not want to photograph what is in my head. I do not have pre-visualized ideas of, oh, I will light it exactly this way and I will get exactly this expression. I believe that the expressions that come to me when I wait for them, the expressions I respond to, are far better than any pre-visualized imagination I might have. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, Raj.
Hi.
Hi. First of all, you know, get some light on your face. You're hardly visible now. Yeah, this is much better. Yeah,
I thought
far
that is
better.
part of the. I thought he wanted it that way.
No, this is far better now. You know, you're
I thought he
visible at
wanted
least.
to shoot on ISO 3200.
Now he can shoot in 3200. Otherwise, it was going over 10,000.
He also was explaining visually his entire process of, you know, how a portrait
Mysterious photography.
Pieces and mysterious, and you can see now, but you can't see now. Sorry, Amit, carry on.
And thank you so much, Raj, for showing such wonderful idea of seeing, as I started with, and the bodies of work. 4 bodies of work. My still, if I say my favorite still remains your first body of work, your about your family, because it's all there is a freshness, there is a non-repetitiveness in that. There is you're curious to explore your relationship with your family, uh, some even relationships, some odd relationships, as you mentioned in earlier talks also. Difficult loves, wonderful title. So it remains a very intense, to me, it remains a very, very intense body of work. Especially few of the portraits of your grandfather, incredible portraits. Some very uncanny moments are there. Then we go on Goa, and of course on Goa we had many conversations in Goa, as you rightly said, and we were talking about mainly about the portraiture. And if I remember correctly, you know, once we had a long session of conversations, rather conversations, I would say, on portraiture, when you said, I'm dead scared of shooting portraits. I'm talking about way back. Now you make us feel that scared. I mean, your portraits are too good. So, this conversation, if you remember, it was around IIC. It started at somewhere around 12:30 at night and went on till 3 o'clock. And we were
Like
just walking around Lodi Garden. Yeah.
Like most things in my photography, it started after midnight.
Yeah, for me, it was like, oh man, next morning. Anyway, so coming back to the wonderful sessions, and then what all I spoke to you about portraiture that day, and I still remember. And my question is very underlying question. You know, what you just spoke about the curiosities, and you are not one of those photographers. You know, you just respond to the first moment. You explore the second, third, fourth moment when you are photographing. anything, not a portrait, but anything. You wait. You have a lot of patience. In the younger generation, if I say one of the photographers I've seen who've got tremendous amount of patience while photographing. So you wait, you wait, you wait. My question is, when you photograph, and you talk about curiosities just now. You talk about the curiosities. You talk about when you said a picture is not about 1,000 words, which I completely agree. I always say that it's not about 1,000 words. It's only about, in photojournalism, you can say, and that phrase only came for photojournalism. A picture is about 1,000 words, speaks about 1,000 words. Beyond that, it doesn't apply, in my opinion. So when you were talking about, to talk about curiosities also, what are the curiosities go on in your mind when you are photographing your subject? Maybe your family, maybe the Clementine, maybe on the streets, maybe the paws and the feet. There is always, because you take a lot of time. You just don't shoot at once. You take a lot of time. You allow your pictures to brew, if may I say. So you allow that moment to brew. So you wait. So what are the curiosities? There must be something going on in the mind. I'm just trying to read the mind for the larger audience.
That's a good question, Amit, but a tough one. Just to before I answer the question, there is obviously a bit of contradiction in the way you describe my process and the way Raghav described my process. Raghav spoke of me being an extremely restless photographer, and you spoke of patience that you've seen in me. And I don't know if both of you are right. Again,
Both of us might be absolutely wrong. But whatever I have observed whatever I have
seen. I see it, if I'm again, thinking out aloud, there are times when when something in your head tells you that there is no photograph here. Maybe you should move somewhere else, or maybe or there is no photograph here. Maybe you should just have a conversation instead of having the camera to your face. And those are the times when I'm extremely restless. But there are occasions when you are seeing this interplay of elements that are slowly forming in front of you, and you believe it's almost there, and that's why you probably spend a little more time and wait, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But what curiosities do I have about different subjects? Amit, the answer would be different for different subjects.
For instance,
it's just that for me, the camera becomes that medium. It becomes that medium of engaging with.
That's for all of us.
With a city. Yeah, exactly. So I think
I'm just trying. Why I'm asking this question. Sorry to interrupt you, because
did you want me to pinpoint upon?
You pick up any picture. That's up to you. Why I'm more interested, because I'm always interested in more than a photograph of any photographer or his work. I'm more interested in his mind. What goes in his mind when for example, it's very okay. If I talk about the family relationship, it's very predictable. Even the title is very predictable there. Difficult love. I would suggest that choose some other title. It's a very predictable title.
The title is a title of a short story by Italo Calvino.
That's okay, but it allows the audience to see in a certain way, but that's okay, fair enough. But that's a different question. That's a different. My idea of my question is about curiosity. Is what goes on when you take there are times when you take hours when you are doing portraits. So what are the curiosities? What are the doubts? What are the questions? What are the queries goes on they keep going on. And you take, like you were telling me once, you were doing a portrait of someone in Paris, and you normally talk about, you normally talk about how you don't talk about how many pictures you have shot. You talk about how many GBs you have shot. So when we talk about GBs, you shot 4 GB or 10 GBs of one person. So I'm sure, what are those conversations? I'm just asking for curious to know for the larger audience, because the audience sitting outside must be very curious to know how the mind, what all applies when you are doing a photographic session, or what all goes on in the mind of the photographer. What are his queries, curiosities, what exactly he is looking at. And I'm sure it varies from subject to subject. There is no fixed rule. It's always out of the box.
Yeah.
But you pick up any picture.
Okay, can I? So I think it's a little difficult for me to give you a precise answer to this question, simply because
there is no precise answer for this.
Let me
Sorry.
speak.
Sure.
It's difficult for me to give a precise answer to this question because, of course, it really depends on subject to subject. However, when I spoke about the camera being a tool to engage, I inherently used to be a very shy person before I picked up photography. I used to be petrified to talk to people. I mean, not really petrified, but I would just be happy in my own world. I would be absolutely happy in my own head. It was usually books, or it was toys and puzzles and things like that. And it was only photography that allowed me, probably for the first time, to start talking. And in that sense, the camera was a shield. And I don't think I'm shy anymore. I mean, a lot of people will laugh when they hear me saying that. Because when I start talking, they're like, when is he going to stop? But it remains that shield, because it is it allows me to process feelings better. It allows me to amplify joys. It allows me to deflect pains. And the reason why I enjoy sticking with a subject, whether it's the fact that I'm photographing a certain body of work now for 10 years, or sticking with a subject in the sense that I might hover around someone, or I might photograph eventually just for that one portrait over 2 hours, not even in a space that allows much, in a very constricted space, simply because I'm just curious about what I will witness. I believe that every subject surprises us. And the reason I keep photographing things is the fact that I know that there will be that one moment when you go like, wait, what just happened? And this is a very beautiful feeling, which all of us go through, even those who are not photographers. When we meet somebody, or when we go to a place that talks back to us. But I think it's only as artists that we are able to preserve a sliver of that emotion. And that is why I'm just curious to be surprised, because and that is why I love to engage with subjects for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, just getting away a bit from your work, I think there's been very interesting questions asked and answered. But of course, staying with you as a person, you have across various talks and whether on platforms or whether when we've had discussions ourselves, mentioned three names who come to mind right now of people who have influenced stroke educated you as a photographer. David D'Souza, Swapan Parekh, and Madhavan. There obviously are more, but these are three which I think, which I also personally feel that probably have had a lot of significant role to play, and interestingly in different ways and probably at different times in your
Absolutely.
evolution as a visual person.
Yeah.
Would you talk a bit about that? Because I think we don't tend to talk enough about who gets us going, who mentored us, and how it works. And I think anyone who's been lucky enough to have people who, in a way, showed them the way, or said, "Here, look at that path. Maybe that's something that you'd like to walk down upon." If you could talk about their various roles, what it was at different times of your life.
So David D'Souza is the photographer who taught me in college when I was studying, thinking that I will be a journalist. It was he who made me fall in love with photography. Madhavan was my first boss and only boss, because that's the only job I've really worked at. He's currently the editor of Better Photography, where I used to work. And Swapan Parekh is...
Sounded quite appropriate, actually.
Yeah. I was going to say Swapan is one of the finest Parekhs in the country. Swapan Parekh, of course, is one of the finest photographers in the country, and personally one of my favorites, both as a photographer and as a person. I think the three of them, if I can pinpoint one thing that each of them have really taught me, is David showed me he showed me the magic. He was that wizard who told me that, listen, photography is not about these numbers. It's not about, I mean, yes, you love math, but photography is not about f5.6 and 1/200 and ISO and whatever else that means. When you see a picture and you fall in love with it, you do not ask what ISO was that shot at. He showed me the works of, he showed us at last the works of Richard Avedon and Henri Cartier-Bresson, Mark Ribot, Raghu Rai, so many icons, Helmut Newton. And it was at the age of 18, 19, when I was discovering cinema also and photography, that I was like, hey, there is so much over here that I would love to explore. So that is with David. Madhavan encouraged me to think more about the medium. Madhavan encouraged me to actually not just to actually invest myself in the process of other photographers, because that was my job when I'm writing on other photographers. And by doing that, I was, I think, able to figure out my own process along the way. And Swapan, I think, sort of was the perfect counterpoint to that. Because while Madhavan would encourage me to think in a certain way, Swapan helped me realize that I can trust my gut as well. That the fact that I write on photography, and that can be a strange bridge to balance, because you're a practitioner and you're writing on the medium. You can be nowhere. You can have one leg here and one leg there, and I'm not flexible enough to do a split. But it was he who sort of helped me realize that there are times that you can trust your intuition, once, of course, you invest in the number of hours that are required to build it.
May I ask a follow-up question to that?
Of course.
Please. one observation really. I mean, and if now having been with these various, I don't even know if the word is mentor or teachers or path showers or murliwalas or, these are these beautiful terms I picked up along the way in the last few months. I personally really like the murliwala one, which Tarun had talked about, of course. And I would imagine there are a fair number of young photographers, and the reason I'm asking this question is that I'm asked that a number of times that, so what should I be looking for in a person to teach me or to mentor me, or do you want to shed some light on that? One. Two, I also want to bring in a little conversation which we started having early in the day today, where I made a comment which you didn't agree with, which I'm so happy that you didn't. I like disagreement and dissent a great deal. My contention was that an artist, whether it's a photographer, whether it's a singer or a painter or a sculptor, is born with a talent. And then it's up to them or her to hone it and take it to levels where it is, the person is then recognized for the kind of work which they produce. And I think this is as true for a photographer as it's for the other art forms. The other contention, of course, is that anyone can be taught any particular art form, right? Which I agree to in a way as far as producing an art work is concerned, and I include song and dance in that. But for a work to have soul over an extended period of time, and I love that analogy which you're talking about, your photograph should be both a window and a mirror. I think the window and the mirror happens only with people who had that innate talent, and that shows through. Talent might be a very limited kind of word. I really mean soul. I really mean that it's something which which is ingrained.
If you don't mind, can you repeat your first question? Because I'll address the first question first, but can you just repeat?
What should a person be looking for in a teacher stroke mentor?
In a mentor.
Right? As bald as that.
Sure.
And then onwards. Yeah.
I mean, David, Madhavan, and Swapan have all been remarkable mentors, but I would first call them friends. And that is probably one thing that I believe someone should look for if they are looking for a so-called mentor. Simply because I believe that you need to love that person enough and trust that person enough such that even if they have decades of experience more than you, you can be vulnerable in front of them. And that will only happen if you really like that person. I mean, you may meet a great photographer and you may think that, okay, should I keep him or her as my mentor? But if you can't gel with that person on a human to human basis, I don't think it's going to work out. That's number one. Number two, I believe the thing to look for is that there should be points you must connect, but there should be a lot of points that you differ. The reason why there should be points that you connect are obvious. You do not want to, go into diverging lines that are going in different directions. But your mentor cannot be an echo chamber of your preconceived ideas. If you believe in a certain kind of aesthetic, you should ideally not, be mentored by someone who believes exactly that, because otherwise you're not really growing. And the third thing I would say is that don't look for mentors. They'll happen when they have to.
That's the Murliwala theory.
Yes, they'll happen if they have to, when they have to, simply because otherwise we are too busy looking at others for validation rather than digging deep into ourselves. Of course, when we are lucky, yes, there come along people who change your life in several different ways. And I'm not talking about mentors. I'm talking about people who become remarkably close friends. I'm talking about falling in love with someone. I'm talking about people who make you realize who you are as a person. And of course, more experienced artists who can probably nudge you in different directions. And your second question?
Wasn't a question, was a statement and an argument. So if you want to carry that forward into this
about whether talent is inborn. I don't know. Yeah, I was terrible at the arts when I was in school. Like I could not. I would draw a man and it would look like a monkey. And I mean, some men look like
So you
monkeys.
weren't meant to be an artist. I mean, you weren't meant to be a painter. But
I think a part of that is it's the.
okay. So let me just rephrase my. So it's not just for talent,
Sure.
which is why, as I kind of meandered through it, it's about soul, as opposed to just mind. I think a person can be trained to mentally, logically be able to understand the mechanics and the technique and the processes of anything, and in a way master it. But it really needs the soul stroke heart.
Sure.
Be able to be the artist whose form of expression that is, whether it's singing, whether it's dance, whether it's photography.
No, but to come back to what I was saying, and I'll come to the idea of soul as well. I think, look, art is taught in terrible ways in our schools, right? In this country, I mean, art is like spinach. And
Soumya might want to say something about that, I would think. But anyway, you carry on.
I'll come to that. Largely, art is taught in absolutely terrible ways in our country, where it is treated like spinach, where it is that sabzi that you're going to scrunch your nose at. So that is why I never really had any affinity towards the visual arts as a child. I loved the sciences. I loved math. So I never even thought that I would have any sort of, say, talent or inclination, forget talent, inclination or interest towards photography or cinema or anything of that sort. However, well, the one visual art that I was taught when I was really young was a very steady dose or overdose of Bollywood. Cinema has been around me from the time I've probably been 1 and 2. I'm named Raj because my mom fell in love with Amir Khan in Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak. So yes, there were visuals surrounding me all the time. And then when I used to read a lot, I was a crazy reader. Sadly, I say was. I don't think I read as often now. But when I would read, there would be images in my head. And though I never picked up the camera, I think when I finally did, both my reading and my love for cinema did come in at some point of time or the other. Not directly, but just I think they both allowed me to imagine. They both taught me to imagine, and that is what my photography is. It's not necessarily about what is in front of me. It's about what it can look like when I see it in a particular way. And when you talk about soul, I think it's not so much, I wouldn't use the word talent. I feel that, yes, craft can be learned, but when it comes to going really deep into either a subject or an emotion or a particular aesthetic, you need vulnerability. And that is a very, it's a beautiful emotion that everyone is capable of, and yet everyone is scared of. So the only thing that has taught me photography over the years has been the fact that I think I've allowed myself to learn, allowed myself to be open to absolutely different ways of seeing, absolutely different ways of thinking. And there have been times that I've closed myself up. I have not been as vulnerable. I've not been as open-minded. So, and I think all of us go through that when we are learning. We believe कि ये path है and हम ऐसे ही जाएंगे. You know, it's about going from A to B because we believe that that's because we are focused. Apparently, we are taught to be focused. We are taught to be ambitious. I wonder. I mean, part of the reason I'm always late is I'm wandering off into some side gully. And I wander into even my learning of the arts. That if I'm supposed to train myself in a certain way of seeing, I will also do this, I will also do that, because that innate sense of curiosity is there and innate sense of openness is there. Beyond that, I don't think that talent was inborn. It was just about allowing myself to feel, which all of us are capable of, and yet very few of us actually do. And I guess the same goes for every art form. Because the craft can be learned, but allowing oneself to be naked and feel that emotion and trust and let someone else trust us, that is not easy.
Raj, I want to come in here and I want to ask you something about your writings on photography as well, and also about the fact that for someone who writes on photography and does it so well, I want to ask you about what you think of, if I may call it, the current trends in the art world to supersede, if not supersede, then at least support art with writings.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what's your opinion on it. And because I, for a matter of fact, know that you're not someone who talks a lot about your own photographs, you know? So I want to understand, how do you see that side of art?
See, that's the irony, right? For somebody who writes on photography, I can't really talk on my, I mean, I don't like to talk about my own photographs as much. I think, see, the fact is that writing on photography is important from one point of view, and that is in terms of being able to understand the work of different practitioners as an archival exercise where the work of different photographers is communicated to others, and it's that legacy is there. It's very important, especially in a country like ours where so many great photographers, their archives are not easily accessible. They are not even perhaps surviving sometimes, right? Uh, but that is about writing on other people's photography. When it comes to writing on one's own photography, that is a necessary evil because that's the way, obviously, things like grants work. That's the way, uh, uh, I mean, galleries demand that. And yes, a photographer ought to express what they are photographing in words is what is said. I only feel that if I want to say something in words, I will. I enjoy words. I will say it in words if I have to. For me, photographs are not do not have the same directness that words do, and I'm happy that my photographs will evoke rather than inform. But of course, we are all part of the system. We are all working with the necessary evil. We are all writing on our work, and yes, it sometimes helps us in different ways. It helps us understand our work as well. But I think there's a certain kind of laziness that puts so much emphasis on the artist statement. It's a laziness on the part of the viewer or on the part of the gallery or the organization or whatever. People want to be told what to think. It's almost as if there's a fear of engaging with something without that baggage, a refusal to be open enough to allow oneself to feel.
If I may interject here, Raj, but the fact that you have an artist statement and the fact that an artist is talking about.
Lost.
Soumya, I can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying the fact that, you know, an artist statement, if written well, informs people about the artist's works. And Raj has dropped out. Raj has dropped out, right?
Raj has dropped.
Oh, so we could make it a conversation among ourselves.
Yeah. It's been. But
I can do my best Raj imitation for a bit.
Raj is here.
Raj, we can't hear you.
Never fear, Raj is here. Yes, tell me.
Yeah. So the fact that, you know, an artist statement, if well written, doesn't that make art more accessible to such a wider audience? Otherwise, it just becomes consumed by people who have a certain level of visual literacy. But an artist statement would also serve the purpose of educating the audience in a way.
Sure, I agree with that. I'm not saying that artist statements are evil. However, for the kind of work that I do, I enjoy the tentativeness that an open mind brings. I want the viewer to approach it with that hesitation of not knowing exactly what they're seeing, and then the pictures forming in their head. Because the blurb of a book is very different from actually reading that book. Yes, artist statements are of course important from a communication perspective. For certain works, they are vital. For certain works, they're absolutely vital. I'm just saying that for some work, and some of my work falls into that category, it becomes too much of hand holding for me. And that is why even in the artist statements I write, I only want to encourage the reader to ask more questions rather than be told all the answers. And I think we tend to get a little judgmental when we say that not everyone has visual literacy to respond to a photograph. I think I've actually seen when something like Blind Boys used to do street exhibitions where they would put up prints on the streets. These very cheap prints that were put all over Bombay. Now, those were not necessarily the kind of works that we might call easily accessible. There were photographs that were using a lot of metaphor, that did not possess all the answers, that were sometimes only about aesthetics and not about story. But there would be so many people who would engage with those pictures, and they would engage with them in their own way. I think as artists, we tend to be a little high and mighty. We tend to believe that we have all the answers, and non-artists don't. So yes, communication is important, but let's not say that that people may not get it otherwise. If they don't get it, it's okay. They can feel and respond to it. When I saw Pyasa for the first time, I was 4 or 5 years old. I didn't get it. I just remembered Guru Dutt standing in that corridor like Jesus Christ. And it was an image that stayed in my head for a really long time. I came back to it years later, and that's when I realized that's what it is.
Thanks. And which is perhaps why, when you shared a little artist statement, if I may call it that, about Clementine, it was done in a way where it did leave the floor open for the audience interpretation. You know, it was that slight nudge to push the audience in a certain direction to look at your work with an open-mindedness. But it did leave it very open to interpretations.
I think generally, see, you also know me as a friend. I generally in life, I enjoy talking in riddles. I have certain conversations with certain people where me and the other person are talking in riddles all throughout, where a third person, if they are eavesdropping, will know what the hell is happening. So it's also a little bit of play. And even in terms of how I show photographs, I believe I would rather not give all the answers when I'm showing an edit. So it's of course that's always a never-ending process because you figure out different edits at different points of time. Yeah.
Thanks.
So Raj, there's a couple of questions that have come in from people who are watching on YouTube. They came in a bit earlier.
Sure.
So I'm going to sort of leave the last part of the talk now with merging one question, which I think will be broad-based.
Okay.
We've had a lot of abstract discussions, but just for the sake of, clarity for people who are sort of starting out in photography.
Yeah.
One of the experiences that at least I've had, and I think you've had, is this eureka moment. You see somebody's work, or you see, I mean, for me, I think you were there. We were at the chapel in Versova, and then I had seen some stuff, and I was going nuts, and I was like, wow, and this is going to change the way I at least try and shoot. Now, I know that you have certain influences in cinema and you have certain influences in photography.
Yeah.
So if you could actually describe or talk about specific, either a film or a photograph or a set of photographs, I'll leave that choice up to you. And as to how it's influenced some of the work that we've seen today.
Okay.
Because there is the question that's linked to this is the two people. There's somebody called Piyush Sharma, who's asked, how do you approach colors while photographing a single body of work?
Okay.
And there's Monica Singh, who's asked a broader question, which is linked, which is, how have you evolved as a photographer? What would you have done then and not do now?
Okay. So, do. These are 3 questions or 4. I don't know.
2.
Let's come to Piyush's question first. Okay. How do I approach color? I instinctively shoot in color. Black and white, in fact, does not come easily to me. I have, in fact, a much longer body of work that I haven't shown today, which happens to be in black and white, but it is not my first instinct. I'm not sure why. I think it's one of those things that, you either bat right-handed or you bat left-handed. I, happen to bat in color. But how do I deal with it? Piyush, from a craft perspective, I think what is very important for me is when I approach a subject or a project, I ask myself, what is the palette of this? It's a very subconscious question. What is the palette of this person or this scene or this landscape or whatever? Is it rang-birangi Asian paints, or is it absolutely subtle color where certain tones are not even visible and that's why certain other tones stand out? Or is it one color washing over the entire frame, right? So again, that's very colorful, but it's not it's not super colorful in the sense there are not too many colors. Maybe it's just one color, but that color is so dominating in its presence. So subconsciously, I'm thinking, what kind of color palette does this subject require, or what kind of color palette does this scene allow? And then it's really a matter of knowing your technique well enough, and knowing things like the basics like exposure and hygiene and things like that, in terms of getting your color palette right. Color is, I believe, like, I don't know, people say color is technically way tougher than black and white. I don't know, because it does come instinctively to me, but balancing one color is not easy. Balancing 2 or 3 colors is not easy, especially in India with the barrage of colors that we are, assaulted with all the time. So if you are starting out, try going simple and see a lot of movies and observe what kind of color palette those movies offer. That might help you imagine the world in certain ways. And at some point of time, your craft will be good enough to reach there. Because a lot of things we imagine in our craft doesn't reach there and we get discouraged. That's okay. At some point of time, that too will happen. What is your other question?
The specific instances where you've seen something, whether it's changed the way you see, or again, from the point of view of craft, whether it's a movie, the work of X or Y photographer, or a specific photograph even, that's had that eureka moment for you.
Just to, I'm thinking of 3 or 4 people right now. Couple I already mentioned, Nan Golden, the way she would use light, for intimacy. And this was done at a time in the analog era. It is way easier to do it with weird light sources right now, using high ISOs. But she created these images which are all green and all yellow and all red and all blue, and such. The emotional content within the photograph is also so powerful, and they both 2 plus 2 becomes 22. It doesn't just become 4. They both add up to really bowl you over. Sunan Golden, yes. Swapan Parekh was a huge influence also in terms of uh, helping me realize that it's okay to not photograph a very pre-decided, defined body of work. It's okay to let the photographs happen to you. At some point of time, your craft and your vision will be sharp enough that the pictures will start sitting together. And then when they start sitting together over time, they'll start talking together. So that may not happen immediately, but it's okay to that. Oh, I do not want to be a fashion photographer. I do not want to photograph just one social issue. Even that is fantastic. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it was more about training your vision. So Swapan, both as a photographer and as a person for that. Saul Leiter, again in terms of his use of color, and in terms of the fact that color for him was not was always a little washed out, just the way memories tend to fade in our heads. So Saul Leiter would use expired film to create faded colors, which I was like, okay, so just the typical color palette we imagine when we see uh, that thing on Photoshop with all the 255 colors or whatever. I don't know how many shades are there.
And the saturation sliders and everything.
I can't see half of them because fun fact, I am partially colorblind. There are colorblindness tests online which I do not pass. But I don't know. I see whatever colors I do. I don't know which ones I see, which ones I don't. But in that sense, Saul Leiter's use of faded color. Also, again, Saul Leiter's use photographs of the ordinary, and the fact that his photographs were not, uh, with the use of blur and extreme grain and things like that. They The fact that uh, pictures do not have to be about one particular thing. They can be just this uh, vague series of dots that encourage the viewer to join them. So Saul Leiter and the cinema Wong Kar-wai. Um I think it was Wong Kar-wai who told me that it is okay to mess with color the way you do. Because initially I would do it instinctively, and like a lot of people would react, like would be very surprised, and sometimes the surprise was good, but sometimes the surprise was bad, and I was like, I feel like shooting this extreme deep yellow street light washing over someone's face, but is it okay? And Wong Kar-wai sort of told me that that you linking color with emotion is actually is valid. Uh, Also, I mean the way Christopher, right? Christopher Doyle has shot In the Mood for Love, the way there's Chunking Express, whether it's Fallen Angels, whether it's Happy Together. It's color is a different is one of the characters in the way he sees the world. In fact, there are very few characters in his movies. It is the color. It is the city and the colors that cities offer. Uh, Also, I think so. Uh, Also, in terms of just story matter, uh, that it's okay to photograph. Again, hesitation. I mean, Wong Kar-wai's stories are also about vulnerability. They are about people encountering their own demons, and engaging with other people. And I think that's something that really shapes the way I shoot. I'd seen his movies a long time ago, but when I saw In the Mood for Love on the big screen, um, it it reaffirmed so many things in terms of my visual palette. Yeah. Also, Amit Chaudhary's writings, which also are so detailed. I mean, and his details are about. Somebody asked about why my faces, my portraits do not have faces, but they have these paws and things like that. Amit Chaudhary would talk about a meeting that's happening, a political meeting that's happening, but he'll spend the first 5 pages talking about the carpet, and then he'll spend the next 2 pages talking about the crack on the wall. And I think what has happened with the fact that I write is that I like writing such that it sounds like photography, and I enjoy photographs that remind me of literature. I enjoy photographs that allow me to uh, imagine rather than just tell.
I think Jasiji has a question.
Yeah.
Raj.
Yeah.
I think it's been a fabulous session. So if you really ask me right now, my mind is a volcano kind of has erupted inside. So there are multiple questions and thoughts are flowing and they're moving in different directions. So it's a mess right now. So I will still try and there was a few things that I was jotting down also while you were speaking. So there are a few things. One is that you also mentioned, and that shows in your work as well, body of work as well, that photography is not about f5.6 or f8 and f and 1 by 125 or something like that. But unfortunately, and you've been associated with a photography magazine as well as a deputy editor.
Yes.
So don't you think that somewhere down the line, and not only in India, I think it's worldwide, in this industry, as an industry, as photography, that somewhere we have lost our way in guiding the youth or the beginners in the right manner. Don't you think that it is important that we teach them how to see and develop their artistic vision than talking about apertures and shutter speeds and ISOs? They are just helping us in a way to handle light in a particular manner, but they are not teaching us artistic vision. So where have we gone wrong, or have we even gone wrong?
No, sorry.
Yeah, no, please.
I was saying I completely agree with you. There is an overt emphasis not just on technical settings, but on gear, especially more so in the age of social media, where suddenly one product comes along, like everyone's obsessed with something called a mag mod, which is a very cool device and it makes things easy. But flash modifiers have existed since photography existed. So the earth has not been reinvented just 2 years ago. But people then think that, okay, buying a particular brand or a particular accessory is suddenly going to make them shape light. Light is going to be shaped either if you're Jesus or if you can really invest time in understanding how that light works and how that shadow works. And yes, all of us are to blame. Publications are to blame as well. But I think when I was at Better Photography, I think at a certain point of time, in fact, Dinesh is over here. It was after Delhi Photo Festival 2011 that we were like, listen, the quality of conversation that is happening amongst practitioners is very different from what we are doing. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we talk about photography in a way that it doesn't go like a Jasprit Bumrah bouncer to an amateur? He doesn't go like, what is he talking about? What is he talking about? The metaphysics of the, some fancy words. But it's also something that a practitioner who's been shooting for 20 years will appreciate or will at least respect. And that is a tough bridge to to actually work on. And I think the magazine successfully did it at a certain point of time. I mean, after there was a time that the magazine was extremely only talking about craft and not even the basics of the craft. But also the world has changed. YouTube was not there when at a certain point in time. Today, the basics of craft are available at your fingertips. However, I think it's also very important to not go the complete opposite way. Craft is very important. When I'm making a picture, I'm not saying 5.6 and 250 are not important. They are so important that I have spent, and any photographer has spent hours and hours and hours internalizing it such that it is in my head and I don't think about it anymore because it's a part of my reflex action. When Sachin Tendulkar is batting, the angle from which his bat comes down is, I mean, has to be a certain angle all the time. That's what Ramakant Achrekar taught him when Sachin was a kid. But when he's facing Shoaib Akhtar, he's not thinking कि मेरा bat 82 degrees से आ रहा है, 91 degrees से आ रहा है, because if he starts thinking like that, he's going to be bold. It's like it's about building your a term that Swapan often uses, building your photographic reflex, which only happens over time. So I'm not saying craft is unimportant. Craft is extremely important, but craft is the building block. Then after, I mean, you know, it's that mitti that an architect will do something with. Just mitti is not going to make you a lovely building or a lovely home. And I think a lot of us forget the fact. I mean, you know, a lot of us start writing when we are in college, or we write some poetry, or we write a love letter, you know, or we write a very nice email to our boss. And then some of us enjoy writing and we keep writing, right? But when was the first time that you learned language? You learned language for the first time when you were 3 years old or 2 years old or 1 year old. You either subconsciously learned it or you were taught it in school. And it's only at the age of maybe 15 that you wrote your first poem. Or it's at the age of 25 or 35. I mean, Arundhati Roy was probably 37 when she wrote her first novel. But she was learning language from the time she was 2.
Yeah.
And most of us pick up photography. Suppose we pick up photography when we are 20. Of course, some people pick it up at 10, some people pick it up at 40. But when we pick up the camera for the first time, within 2 years, we are not going to be able to produce the kind of photographs that we want to. Because अगर हम लिख रहे होते हैं, we have been training, subconsciously we've been training our head for 2 decades. Photography is just that 1 year or those 2 years. And aperture, shutter speed, and all these things, I mean, all these things, you know, inverse law, whatever, diffuser kya hai, blah, blah, they are all prepositions and conjunctions and pronouns. Without knowing what a preposition is, you can't string a perfect sentence together. Without knowing what a verb is, you can't string a perfect sentence together. But they're only the verb. Yes, just rattoing a Renan Martin is not going to make you, Ernest Hemingway, not going to make you a great writer.
I think very well answered. And I think there's a perfect balance that is required. But somewhere down the line, I personally feel that we are to blame that we have over a period of time allowed these camera manufacturers to really overpower and start controlling the industry. That is where things have gone wrong. And that is where megapixels have always started scoring over the aesthetics. I think that's a different topic to discuss.
No, I absolutely agree. And just to answer you in one line, I think most camera manufacturers in India have no clue about photography.
Yeah.
There are some very nice people who work at some of these companies, and some of them happen to be friends. But largely, they do not have a vision about selling photography. They have a vision about selling cameras the way you would sell Vim bars.
I don't think they don't even have that now. They are there.
Okay, I mean, I'm not in that world too much, but yeah. Anyway,
I think
yes. Okay. No, I had a follow-up question to something that Raj just said.
Sure.
Which was about the fact that even if you're picking up the camera at about 40, it's not, and you've spent 2 years taking before you take a good photograph, but that's not your learning in photography that's happened in 2 years. It's a culmination of everything that's happened before that. But do you think that a lot of times when we're talking about photography, we do end up putting a lot of emphasis on our successes in creating good photographs, on the importance of that one moment and the importance of learning what we have learned through that, and we do not talk enough about the failures or the building blocks to to projects or to our photographs?
I think it largely depends on how we define success. Some people define success as acclaim. Some people define success as money. Some people define success as clout. Some people define success as freedom. Uh, Everyone's version of success is very different. Um, for some people, the reason to make pictures is to only tell stories, whatever be the aesthetics of the picture. For some people, it's an exercise in aesthetics. For some people, it's the process of shooting. फिर जो भी photograph निकले. I mean, Gary Winogrand did not look at a majority of the photographs he shot. He passed away without having looked at thousands and thousands of his negatives. Because for him, the thrill and the high was in the process of shooting, was in the process of making that a picture, in looking for it and searching for it, in photographing it. Then whether the photograph worked or not, whatever it be. So he loved photography more than photographs in a way, right? And each of us can be different. For me, I love photography more than photographs, but I love photographs as well. So, but for each of us, this idea of success is very different. And of course, failure is, I mean, I come back to what Rakesh Omprakash Mehra said at the F-Stop talk. Failure as a word is filled with negative connotations, but it is an important stepping stone for absolutely everything. How much did Sachin Tendulkar score in his first test innings? Not much. So that's the whole idea, is that if it was not called failure, we will not allow it to bog us down so much. He said that why don't we call it ping pong? Why don't we just call it something that is a part of the process?
See, ping pong you cannot romanticize. Failure you can romanticize, right?
Now you sound like Ranbir Kapoor of Rockstar, where you want to like romanticize the idea of pain because that is going to make you a great artist. But no, it's like this. Yeah, see, what is success is a very vague term. People associate success only with ki, mere ko cuff parade mein flat.
Okay, when I say success, I mean success in making a good image. That's what I'm talking about. But before that good image, there are probably like in one 30 GB, 32 GB card that you're shooting, there are probably 4 or 5 images that you'll really like, but all the rest of the images are not the images, right?
No, obviously. And for me, for me, the fact that not every photograph is a success, is a so-called success as a good image, is a relief. Thank God. Because if every photograph of mine was great, that would be so boring. For me, the joy of photography is in looking and then encountering something and going like, nah, not quite. So if I knew the magic formula of what was a good photograph, it would be the most boring thing in the world.
I think that's what makes photography so interesting and challenging.
And for some of us pressurize ourselves too much. You are right, but for me, the joy is in the fact that not every picture will be a success. It's just that.
Where is Raghav? I think we will have to wind up now. Raghav, you there?
Any other questions?
I think Amit has a question. We can't hear him.
I'm right here. I was just saving some bandwidth.
Hi, Amit.
It can be a pressure, if you take the case of Raghurai, it can be a pressure or passion of making every picture a successful picture. So, for him, it's like, oh man, if this is not done, to kya kara pure din mein?
Sure.
So no, it varies, it varies. There is no.
I absolutely agree with you, but the first, see, that's the beauty where everyone's so different. The first ever interview I'd done in Better Photography, I remember the headline. I don't remember the name of the photographer. He was a fashion photographer based somewhere in Europe. But I remember the headline. it was, I do not care about photography. I only care about photographs. Because for that person, the process didn't matter.
Very
He
good.
was like, it's an,
Yeah.
he in fact said that he hates the process sometimes.
Yeah.
But for him, the joy of seeing that final image, because he would do these painstaking sets and, creations and things like that. Now, everyone has their own trip. It's fine. Any other questions? Anything on YouTube with that any of the audience members are asking, Jassi?
There's, I think everything has been asked by Raghav only from YouTube. There's just, so I'm not giving it, I'm just reading it out now. There is a couple of comments made by Elric Fernandez.
Okay.
So just comments on what we've been discussing is that couldn't have put it better, Raj. Emphasis on gear has today resulted in lack of diverse originality. Much of social media has brought out a herd mentality in and around the art world. And he goes on to say that the process of learning and unlearning, detachment and openness is something which needs to be spoken about more. I think we can't agree more. Yeah.
I mean, unsolicited advice, I know, but for everyone who is always wanting to invest in the next best camera, I tested a camera back in 2008, and I remember writing a review at that time. Ki if you finally we have a camera where if you miss a photograph, it's your fault. It's not the camera's fault. So this is 2008 I'm talking about, and the technology has moved that far ahead that now every time the next best thing will be here. I mean, iPhone 13X, S, R, A, J, whatever will come. But instead of investing in that, invest either in photo books. I have around 400 photo books at home, and a lot of people wonder how the hell do I have those many photo books. But the only reason is because in terms of equipment, I've bought 2 cameras in the past 10 years. So while most friends of mine, including fellow professionals, will buy a camera every year or every 2 years or something of that sort and spend 2 lakhs, I'll rather spend that 2,000 rupees on the photo book. And that is really education. For some people, it may not be photo books. For some people, it may be travel, it may be experiences, it may be literature, whatever it is. But instead of investing stuff only in gear, if we invest time and money elsewhere, we might be happier. Forget everything else. Yeah.
I think it was
Lovely.
So Raghav ji, aap close kare, and then we wind up. I think we wonderful session. I might call you because I have a lot of things going on in mind, but so I might call you up. So
sure, whenever, sure. Any final questions? Raghav, you are on mute.
So I think I've gotten all the questions from YouTube as well. All I can do is, start by thanking Jassi ji for putting this together and having us all here. And thank you to all the panelists for, all your insights and questions. And finally, thank you to Raj for sharing your wonderful work with us. I hope everyone on YouTube enjoyed the session, and I managed to address as many of their questions to Raj as I could. So thank you so much, Jassi ji, and I think we'll call it a close.
I would just like to apologize for some of the technical glitches that we started with, and to be honest,
we'll put the name on Zoom, so don't worry.
while we were,
if you don't have glitches, then you're not in a webinar.
Zoom lenses are anyway supposed to. I mean, you'd rather have prime, but no, I'm kidding. I'm making a bad gear joke to end this, but no, I'm sorry for the glitches. Wherever they came from, we can blame our respective governments and our respective internet service providers. But I hope that the conversation was engaging for people after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you.
And
thank you, Raj.
Feel free to reach out to me. I mean, on Instagram or on email or whatever it is. My Instagram handle is lookduc. Dekho kya tum dekh sakte ho. Lookduc. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I would have mentioned his Instagram profile in the description, so you can just go there. Anybody still is not able to find, just let me know. I'll send you the link directly. And I think it was one of the most engaging and intense sessions we've had. It's amazing. I have a lot of questions which we don't have unfortunately time for, so I'm going to really bug Raj for some time now. But on a lighter note, I would really love to see when he's walking. Does he see just the hand or the face as well of the people he's crossing? So the hand or the nail or the hair, a strand of hair or feet, and with the feet, does he also see the feet of dog, even though they are not there? So just a few of the interesting connotations that how you are walking and what do you see when you're walking.
Every picture is a part of a puzzle, right? So all of these are just pieces, and then it's up to us to fit them together.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Raj, for really accepting
Thank
this.
you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Thank you, Raga, for again. Probably.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
About you.
Thank you so much, Raj. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Raghav.
Thanks,
you,
Raghav.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you, Soumya. And thank you to everyone that tuned in on YouTube and on a Sunday. So thank you. I mean, kya Sunday, Monday in lockdown, but still, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.